Welcome to the Fourth Branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening. Any man can make mistakes, but only an idiot persists in his error. Ignorance is the biggest threat to our democracy. It is, however, the ignorance of the ignorance which represent the greatest danger to a society. It is what turns an ignorant man into a lunatic. Thus lies the danger, the peril even of a man, a community, a state, a country, and yes, even a society. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. Indeed, it does. We've seen it, haven't we? We've witnessed it. We are all living it, are we not? All men are born ignorant. Many have chosen to stay and live in ignorance. Only a few recognize that ignorance is indeed the root and stem of all evil and made the choice to be ignorant no more. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch program. First, a warning. This program is not suitable for all audiences. I repeat, the content of this program is not for everyone. To find out if it's suitable to you, answer the following two questions. 1. Would you entrust your teenage daughter to a known rapist? And question 2, would you have a known pedophile cared for your toddler? Once again, would you entrust your teenage daughter to a known rapist? And question 2, would you have a known pedophile cared for your toddler? Your time is up, obviously. If you had difficulty answering either question, this program is not for you. If you answer yes to either or to both questions, this program is definitely not for you. But if both of your answers are absolutely not, this program is catered exclusively to you. You should stick around. It is enlightening, informative, educational. We'll be right back. Join me here on the fourth branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. This is the fourth branch.
Common sense in a world of chaos.
This program will resume in just a moment. We have been talking exclusively about a very sensitive topic, welfare. Here in the United States, the word welfare is a very disturbing word. It is obscene. It is avoided even by the very people who would have a need to receive public assistance. The word has been demeaned. The word has been beaten. The word has been used to refer to individuals who are considered bad elements of society. It is separated from entitlement systems such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. But in any industrialized country, in any rich country, welfare is necessary. In fact, just to add my 5 cents opinion to that, I would say for the United States of America, it is critical to have a welfare program. Now, in comparison to other rich countries, to other industrialized countries, the United States has been far behind. For instance, as you can see in the graph in front of you, we have Canada, France, Japan, UK, and US. If you look at the graph, you would notice that of those 5 countries, the United States is behind in helping those who have financial difficulties, those who are at the bottom of the financial ladder, those who are struggling financially. It has been that way for a very long time. The question is, why would the richest country in the world fail so miserably to take care of those who are struggling financially? What is the problem? Why would that be? The answer actually lies in a very simple observation a very simple predicament that the United States of America is very typical for. But before I address that, today we will be talking about the recipient of welfare. Yesterday we debated the origin of welfare. Today we are going to talk about the recipient. Who are recipients of the welfare public assistance here in the United States? Tomorrow we will address the cost and what those recipients receive. So how much, what do they receive, in which way they receive whatever recipient of public assistance receive, and what does it cost to the country. But today we're going to focus exclusively on the recipient. But yesterday we started a conversation to show that there is a group which should have been recipient in the welfare program, but have mostly avoided being part of it. And actually it is sad, because those individuals, and here it is, those individuals are actually the veterans in the country. Yes, the very individuals who fought for the country, the very individuals who gave their all for the United States of America, those individuals who have suffered tremendously, physically, emotionally, psychologically. Yes, those very individuals, they are homeless, scavenging for food in trash cans across the nation. Now, those individuals should have no problem whatsoever collecting public assistance until they're able to get back on their feet. But there is a very simple reason that those individuals rather be on the street homeless than seeking for public assistance. It is sad, but the Republican Party, almost exclusively pundit and GOP leaders, are indirectly responsible for that problem. Yes, you heard right. This is not a speculation. This is not an assumption. We will lay it out for you so that you can see that the same party, Republican Party, that almost always claim to be so good towards the armed forces, are the very individual who are making it so difficult for our veterans, those who we send overseas to fight, so that we can keep our freedom, have our liberty. When those individuals return back home, sometimes they lose their families because they can no longer have a family, because their ways of change, they have changed. They are emotional, psychological, sick, broken, so they can no longer have a family. So they end up on the street. Now the same group, the Republicans, who so much want freedom for all, freedom for other nations, who actually expands the lives, the freedom of our soldiers, when they come back, the Republicans just threw them away on the street. And on top of that, they make it really, really difficult for them to get public assistance. Now, of all the veterans that we had the luxury to talk to, most of them decide to be on the street because they figure that, Yes, they coping, they're homeless, they have a hard time, but they believe that they can keep their dignity being homeless than being humiliated going to one of those offices where they could receive public assistance. Now, that is a shame. And the reason that they say that is because you may not know much about those offices, but the people who work at those offices, public assistance, welfare, they very often insult and humiliate people who come seeking for help, for financial help. So there is a need for reforms in those offices. When Republicans are talking about welfare reform, usually that's not what they have in mind. But I'm going to show you why they always have a different thing in mind when they're talking about welfare reform, not a way for our veterans. Currently, there are 40,000 of our veterans who are homeless, living on the street. Yes, 40,000. When Obama took office in 2009, according to record, there were approximately 74,000 homeless veterans on the street. Obama and company have worked to bring the number down. It's supposed to be zero. At least that's a goal, to make certain that there is not a single veteran on the street homeless, begging or scavenging for food. Unfortunately, Obama didn't achieve that feat. So it would fall under the next administration to continue that job. But those veterans would wait for a very long time for that to happen. Now, back on track. The reason, at least one of the reasons, our veterans are not seeking for public assistance when they come back from deployment and they no longer have a family and they are on the street is because, according to some of them, they would rather be homeless, be on the street, than going to one of those offices seeking for public assistance and be humiliated by the individual who are there at those offices to help them. It is a shame that people who are in a position who actually have a job and whose job is to help those who are financially in trouble, but instead of helping those individuals, what do? They insult them, they humiliate them. Yes, the welfare program does indeed need reform. But the kind of reform that Republicans always allude to or refer to has nothing to do with what I just said. Now, I'm going to take the elephant out of the room in order for you to understand why welfare in the United States is regarded as a program that should be completely eliminated. I must say, in all fairness, it's usually Republicans in general that who would want the welfare program to completely disappear. And it's not just GOP leader who try to get a public office, but the pundit. If you go on Fox, the welfare system is such a bad thing that it should have ended a long time ago. Now, the reason you're looking on your screen, this contrast between veterans who are homeless and a tax cut for the rich, which I call a welfare for the rich, is because just February 2017, the Republican Party single-handedly passed a $1.5 trillion welfare check for the large corporation and wealthy individual. But Mitch McConnell a few weeks ago proposed, in order to take care of our national debt, to cut the entitlement benefit, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and of course, all the public assistance program. Now, you don't have to be a genius to understand that there is something totally awkward, crooked, Machiavellian about this type of move by the Republican. They don't have any problem whatsoever. Go and borrow money that we don't have. Yes, they borrow that money, which means when you borrow, you have to return. That brings me to the conversation of one of my viewer who asked the question, how could you be talking about a problem with the tax cut when we receiving money? And that automatically tells me that we have a bigger problem than I thought. Because up to this point, despite the fact that I had explained in really very simple terms what this tax cut is about, it seems that at this point, there are people who still do not grasp the concept. If you borrow money, you have to return it. And if you borrow money, there are interests added to that money that you borrow. The country borrowed $1.5 trillion. 90% of that money went to wealthy individual and large corporation. $1.2 trillion of that went to large corporation and wealthy individual. But we, the people, we're responsible to pay back the whole $1.5 trillion. So for those who are asking, the $40, the $60 you're seeing on your paycheck, you actually have to return that back along with more of what you never received. The 1.2 trillion that went to large corporation and wealthy individual, you also responsible for that. So I'm not here this time to talk about that, but I had to make that point very clear because it looks like there are still some people who don't understand that concept. I explained it very clearly, and if you want to find out about that, I really suggest that you take a look at the People Branch YouTube channel. On the People Branch YouTube channel, you'll find there are several videos, and those videos, I talk a lot about that. When I explain Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, I talk to a great deal about what it means to borrow money and what exactly it means when we have to return that money. So the $40, the $60 you're receiving, that you're seeing, it's not yours, it's borrowed money, and you're going to return it at some point. And on top of that, you also owe money that was given to the large corporation and wealthy individual. Now, back to the problem at hand. The problem that we're having is the fact that, yes, our veterans, 40,000 of them, are homeless because when they come back from deployment, they lose their family, they lose their home, they end up on the street. Not because they're crazy, because a lot of people believe that once they see someone on the street, that means the individual is crazy. No, those used to be the veteran that used to go to war to defend the United States of America. Those who went and gave it their all. Those who actually gave up their own family. And sometimes they come back, there is no family. Those are the people you see on the street begging for money and sometimes scavenging for food. It's humiliating enough, and yet they consider that better than going to an office where they could seek for public assistance. And the reason for that is because the individual who work at those offices, they humiliate people who come to seek for help. They insult those people. Now, I'm going to take the elephant in the room so that we can say why the welfare system is so badly regarded by the Republican. And it's not out of the blue that the Republican, almost exclusively, yes, Democrats have complained about that, and my suspicion is it's because of so much pressure from the Republican Party that get a lot of time the Democrat to join the bandwagon and asking for welfare reform. In fact, if you remember, Bill Clinton in 1996 did a major welfare reform. We're not going to be talking about that, but I just want to point those things out so that you can grasp where we're coming from. But in order to solve that very problem, we're going to have to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to show you exactly where the problem comes from. And we're going to try to remove the elephant in the room, because unless that elephant is exposed, the problem about welfare is always going to be around. We're talking about who are the recipient of welfare, the major recipient of welfare. Up to this point, there has been so many myths about that. So we're going to come back. We're going to show you where that originated, and we're going to put that elephant in the middle of the room and turn that elephant left and right upside down so that you can get a good grasp as to why we're having that problem and why our veterans rather be on the street than seeking for public assistance. And we want to end that. So talking about taking care of our veteran, every year, Republican and Democrat alike, they line up to say that we have to take care of our veteran. And yet, that's the only time that they give a speech about the veteran, and the day is over and everything is back to normal, to the status quo. But our veterans have been complaining as to avoiding the humiliation of going to those offices to seek for public assistance, because the people who work there are a bunch of people who do not appreciate the fact that those individuals who are on the street, they are seeking for help. They're not lazy people who just want to sit and enjoy the life. They're looking for financial relief. So we're going to come back. Hang on just a second. When we come back, we will show you what's been causing this big problem in the welfare system. Join me here on the Fourth Branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. This is the Fourth Branch.
Common sense in a world of chaos.
This program will resume in just a moment. In 1976, that's 42 years ago, there was a candidate for president, Ronald Reagan, prior to running for public office. He was governor of California at some point. Prior to running for public office, Ronald Reagan was an actor. He had a good sense of humor. Now, it is difficult at this point to know whether he was creating a character that to explain something, or he was just kidding, he was just joking. But nevertheless, here is what he said about the welfare program. Ronald Reagan speaking. There is a woman in Chicago. She has 80 names, 30 addresses, 12 social security cards. She got Medicaid, getting food stamp. She's collecting welfare under each of her names, and she has a tax-free income of $150,000. That woman, that character that I just read to you, never existed. There was never any such woman which depicted, that Ronald Reagan painted. But after painting that character, she coined the phrase welfare queen. This was the beginning of the biggest problem for the welfare program. A candidate for president created a character which is as real as Bigfoot, but the unfortunate part is the fact that that character has taken a life on its own, that every presidential election we hear candidate for president alluding, not the same way as Ronald Reagan, but alluding to that to say what they're going to do for welfare reform. Now, that welfare queen that Ronald Reagan painted is a character that endures, to the point that I do believe that politicians use it because it benefits them. It helps them rallying people to the cause. I do not believe necessarily they believe that, but nevertheless, they use it over and over to the point that that character becomes real. But I'm going to show you what's even more troubling about that. And the reason I tell you that is because it's not an isolated story. It is relevant to the fact that the welfare system has not been strengthened and improved. It's because of that story that started in 1976, and that story has for since then been around and been making its way in our political discussion, and it has become such an integral part of presidential election that you can set your watch on it. There's going to be one or more candidate who are going to make reference to that welfare queen, one way or another. So 42 years later, we're still talking about the welfare queen. Now, it's already bad enough, but what makes the picture of the welfare system even worse is the fact that that welfare queen was understood by Ronald Reagan's audience to be black. So, there is a problem in the welfare system is because, well, it seems that blacks are really the one milking the system. Look at the welfare queen. She has 80 names, 30 addresses, 12 social security, and she got welfare check for each one of those names. Her tax-free income, $150,000. That would get you upset, outraged. Now you understand why Republican candidate for president always use that as being the springboard to get people to rally behind them, because you would get anybody to be upset about the fact that you have someone sitting living the life while you're going to work. snow, sleet, rain, heat. You're going to work, and then here you are, that welfare queen sitting at home, eating caviar, drinking martini, just collecting welfare check. If you start understanding where the problem comes from, you start understanding why most of the conversation you've been hearing, especially in the Republican circle, are just made-up stories. Nothing real about the story. That woman that Ronald Reagan painted is as real as Bigfoot. But, hey, it served the purpose for those seeking the office of the presidency. Now, when we return, we're going to show you, we're going to put the two big elephants in the room. Now, there are at the very least, 6 major myths about welfare. But we're going to only talk about 2. The other 4 would most likely fall under the how much recipients receive. So we will talk about that tomorrow. But now we're going to expose the 2 elephants in the room, and we're going to show you why it is important that you understand that, number one, the country does indeed have a need for the welfare program. Every industrialized country, every rich country has a program to help those who have financial problems. Now, especially Republicans in general, I have a difficult time understanding how they can at the same time claim to be a Christian and trying to hurt those who are the most vulnerable in our society. It just doesn't jive. But they want to claim to be Christian, but they want nothing to do with Christianity. I'm not sure how that works. Maybe by going to church on Sunday, that should do it. Or by saying you're a Christian, that should do it. But living the life of a Christian is not necessary. I guess I have to learn that. But hold your horses. We will be right back to give you a preview of the 2 biggest elephants in the room when it comes to welfare, as to why today we have the problem that we have with the welfare program in the United States, and why our veterans are shunning as much as humanly possible the very idea of seeking for help, for financial help, when those programs are here to help them get back on their feet. In 1996, a small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy, constantly bombarding the airways with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies, presenting to its audience as news. Fox has created an army of blissful ignorance. According to a recent survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore. There are two big elephants in the room that make the welfare system unappealing, unattractive, even for those who are in a position to seek for public assistance. The first big elephant in the room is the welfare has been used overwhelmingly by blacks. That is across the board. Republicans overwhelmingly believe that. Some Democrats do, but in general, the American people believe that blacks make up the bulk of the people on welfare. And the second big elephant in the room is they are living the life. That's why they don't want to, they're lazy. Things are so good for them that, why would you leave? Because things are fantastic. Now, the elephant is black. There was a time when war on drugs literally meant put cops on the street to arrest black people who are users of drugs. And a number of blacks' lives have been wasted by that campaign. That was war on drugs. Only a couple of years ago, the war on drugs has taken a different meaning, is to help those who are dependent on drugs. And the reason, if you're guessing right, is because it started becoming obvious that whites are also doing drugs quite a bit. That was always the case, by the way. According to stat, that was always the case, but blacks were always on the street being picked up by cops, so overwhelmingly it's a black issue. So blacks were being arrested, put in jail, even have a record because it's an offense, it's a crime. So there are plenty of blacks whose lives have been ruined by that perception. With the welfare, prior to Ronald Reagan painting that picture, the welfare program was always what it's supposed to be. A program which assists people who have financial problems, who have fallen under the poverty line, and they get public assistance until the time that they can get out of it. Because contrary to this perception and those kind of things you listen to on Fox, no one who is receiving public assistance would want to stay there. And tomorrow, when we discuss what they're getting, you'll get a better sense as to why. No one, don't get me wrong, in everything that there are exceptions. You're going to find a few people in life who just give up on life, who just don't care anymore. And it may happen, and I cannot argue that. You may find that you have a few people that you can point to and say that person has been on welfare, that person has been on welfare for however many years, whatever that is. But in general, people who are receiving public assistance, I don't know how it could even cross anybody's mind that that individual would want to stay on welfare forever. So the idea that recipients are living the life was because of that picture, that image that Ronald Reagan painted of the welfare queen who was living the life. $150,000 40 years ago is most likely, I didn't get a chance to calculate the value of money, but even if you put it at 8%, well, I'll put it at 6%, you're probably talking about almost $500,000 equivalent today. Actually, more than that, $750,000 equivalent today. So that welfare queen was living the life. So that irritates people, that angered people, and you can understand why, if you get that story, you would want the welfare to be completely eliminated as well. Because first, why would you go to work, bust your butt off, sleet, rain, snow, heat, you going to work, and then for someone to sit and eating caviar, drinking martini, and you taking care of that individual, right? You would be angry too. But if you're smart, you have to ask the question. Because when someone tells you a story, that's how you know those people at Fox lie to you, because first, that's what they do for a living. They divorce with the idea of saying anything that's true. But that aside, when a story is told, you can easily reverse part of the story in order for you to understand whether there is any truth to it. Now, if it's that good for the people on welfare, the individual that are telling you that story, why would that individual or anybody else who get to know about that great life that people on welfare are living not just give everything, stop going to work, stop facing the weather, and just go to work and just sit there and collect a welfare check? Why wouldn't they do that if it's that great? Now, the myth that makes it difficult for real solution to be implemented in the welfare program is because, one, Republicans, who are always at the center of asking for welfare reform, they've been pushing the idea that it's overwhelmingly blacks. Blacks are the ones that are on welfare. They're a bunch of lazy people who don't want to go to work, who just want to sit there and just living the life. Ronald Reagan did an excellent job painting a character that happened to endure up to today. But where does the truth lies? Now, it's easy for me to tell you that that's not true, right? It's easy for me to tell you that. And you, if you're a Republican in particular, it's almost a given that you already embrace that as the Bible truth because you heard it on Fox, you heard Rush Limbaugh saying that, people that you've been listening to, you've been hearing them, and on top of that, they bring some fools that they pay a few thousands of dollars to tell a story about being on welfare, collecting check, and go and surf, and then you stay in your mind, this is what it is, how it is. Why complain? Why don't you just join them if it's that good? It's available. If it's that good, the way that Fox is describing it by bringing someone that they do give some money on the side to tell you a story so that it can rile you up, and that person is telling you, I'm living the life, I'm getting welfare check while every day I go surfing. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to find a few people who couldn't care less, who just living day by day, and as far as they're concerned, the little check that they receive, that's good enough. Now, I cannot prevent, the system cannot prevent some of that from happening. It's always going to happen. In any program, any situation, if you have human being part of it, there are always going to be those type of problems. But it's not the majority. As a matter of fact, I could say that it's probably less than 5% of those people who do those kind of things. If it's even that much. That is the reason that you find that Republicans, instead of helping, like today, what are they doing? The Trump administration had Chris Christie do a study on the problem of opioid in the country. Why? Because they have come to the conclusion that a lot of whites are hooked up. Now it's no longer a war on drugs. After ruining many lives of blacks family for the same problem. Now, we're going to show you, to give you numbers, because so far I'm telling you a story that no, blacks, it's a myth that blacks are responsible or represent the group that consume most of the budget for the welfare program. That's the myth that's been around for at least 42 years. Not true necessarily if Ronald Reagan created that myth, but it did help quite a bit by painting the picture of a woman who was living the life with 80 names, 30 addresses, 12 social security cards, and collecting checks on each one of those names, just living the life. And that get to rile up Republican constituents who don't know any better, unfortunately, who have to rely on those ignorant people at Fox who couldn't care less about really educating you. In fact, they rather you stay and become dumber because it benefits them. That's their source of revenue. The dumber you are, the better it is for them. That's how they've been staying on top of the world. As long as you keep buying their lies, as long as you keep accepting what they're saying, however false it is, that's great. This brings money. Now, hold on just a second. When I come back, I'm going to give you real figures that clearly show you the myth that has been around for 42 years has been just that, a myth. Now, concocted by Republicans for the sake of being able to get elected, but it's nothing other than just a myth. And hopefully, once you get to know and understand it is a myth, now you get involved and understand that it's necessary to have a welfare program that serves everyone who has financial problems. I'll be right back. Join me here on the 4th branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. This is the 4th branch.
Common sense in a world of chaos.
This program will resume in just a moment. We did mention that the welfare program is for people who have financial need. And those people, they do not have any intention of staying to receive a public assistance forever. And there are very good reason for that, which we'll address tomorrow, and you'll see why too. But I have to bring to your attention that despite the fact blacks have been stigmatized as recipient for the welfare program, yesterday I mentioned there are quite a few people who actually today are successful individuals who were at some point in time recipient of the welfare program, public assistance. You have George Romney, who was Mitt Romney's father. Yes, George Romney was a recipient of welfare, of public assistance. You have Barbara Bono, was a candidate was challenging Chris Christie. You have Ben Carson, very famous Ben Carson. You have Peter Drake. Now was Drake Enterprise. I mean, the list goes on. It's a long list. And it's not just here in the United States either. It's a long list of people who have fallen off the financial ladder. They need help to get back on their feet. And that's what the welfare program is, to help. But I'm going to show you that while a lot of individuals, whenever they hear the word welfare, again, they always think blacks. Now, I'm going to give you a few numbers so that you can see that this is not actually so, and for you to understand that it it's a myth that had survived so many presidency that even Donald Trump, well, Donald Trump is a case on its own, but it's probably necessary to mention it. In the spring of 2017, I don't know if you recall, Donald Trump invited the Congressional Black Caucus into the White House. And there was a conversation, and the conversation hinged on the fact that a welfare reform would be detrimental, because everybody knows what Republican means by welfare reform. Not in order to strengthen the program so that those who have financial problem can get help and they get assistance to get a better life. Usually, whenever you hear Republican mention welfare reform, that means let's cut the help that people on welfare receive because, oh, gee, they're blacks anyway, so nothing lost there. And Republicans know, or they already determined, or they already resigned themselves to the fact that they don't get much black vote anyway, so they don't care if they cut something that blacks receive. So here it is, numbers for you. And I'm going to read a part of an article that was written by Newsweek. And the conversation with Trump, I'm reading at the very end of the conversation where one of the members of Black Caucus say, not all people who receive welfare are black. And the president, Donald Trump, say, really? Then who are they? Now, the question alone should tell you exactly the elephant in the room, that Republicans in general are very inclined to think that, well, people on welfare are black. In fact, if you listen to Donald Trump's question rather, it doesn't believe there is any white. Because when they say not all, one member of the Black Caucus say not all people who receive welfare are black. And Donald Trump, surprise, really? Who are they? So in other words, it's black. That's said. There is no if and but about it. Now, whether other Republican elected official, like senator, congressmen, are that ignorant, I'm not sure. But regardless, they too use this dog whistle every time that they have to campaign for office. Now, in fact, white people are the biggest beneficiary when it comes to government program like this, like temporary assistance for needy family, commonly referred to as, drumroll, welfare. Now, here's the breakdown. White people who do not have a college degree from 18 to 64 represent the class that is the largest that's been lifted out of poverty by those kind of programs, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Now, according to a report that was put out in 2017, a report that was put out, that means Trump just got in office, and that report was put out. And the report was based on information that were collected prior to 2017, obviously. And here's what the report said. 6.2 million working age white people were lifted above the poverty line. 6.2 million. Now compare that to just 2.8 million blacks and 2.4 million Hispanic. Now, if you add both blacks and Hispanic together, it still doesn't match the number of white people on welfare that were lifted out of poverty according to data that were put in that report in 2017. The data were collected up to 2014. Put on that report by a think tank, 2.8 million blacks, 2.4 million Hispanic. When you put those two together, it comes to 5.2 million people, minority if you prefer, together. But for whites, it was 6.2 million. So which means even when you put blacks and Hispanic together, whites still make the bulk of the people on welfare, according to that report 2014. Well, actually, I shouldn't say on welfare, because the people that were lifted out of poverty. So it's both people on welfare and people who were considered under the poverty line, because IRS has what they consider a threshold to determine who is in poverty, who is not. So if you are at or under that line, then you consider under the poverty line. So automatically you are eligible to receive some form of public assistance. So even if you work, for instance, today, as I'm talking to you, if you are a family of 4 and the total amount of money that is brought into the house, it doesn't matter who, the man, the woman, or everybody together brings a total of $25,000, you automatically considered under the poverty line. So if you if you were to be in a family that in that predicament, that family would be considered at the poverty line. So automatically that individual or those individual, father and mother, would be automatically eligible to receive public assistance, some form of public assistance. That's what we're talking about. 6.2 million white, 2.8 million blacks, and 2.4 million Hispanic. 2014. But that's not all. We're going to go over the numbers so that you get a sense that when you hear those goons at Fox, which I consider really ignorance, because when you pass information to your audience, that's false information, misleading information, it benefits them, obviously, because it gets you to, if you're a Republican, you like watching Fox, it gets you to be glued to Fox to tell you what you like to hear. Now, what you like to hear doesn't make it true because you like to hear it. Because those information that I'm giving you are information that are verifiable, information that were collected by third-party group. Those third party, they do not have any stake on either political party. Their job is to collect fact, historical fact, so that those information can be made available for whatever reason, study, etc., etc. Of course, the government can use those numbers as well to implement program, to strengthen program, and so on. But those groups that do those jobs, they do not have a stake on those information. They third party, they neutral party, they just collect and put that information out there. Yes, according to a think tank report that was put out there in 2017, report that was based on data collected up to 2014, 6.2 million individuals who were lifted above the poverty line were white, 2.8 were black, and only 2.4 were Hispanic. Now, you may have heard of the SNAP program. Maybe you haven't. The only thing it means is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, short for SNAP. Now, this is also a program that used to be called, drumroll, food stamp. Remember that? That's when Mitt Romney was caught on video. That's how he referred to the people who were the 47% who are going to vote for Obama, because he said, well, the food stamp people, they always going to vote for Democrat because this is the party of the food stamp. I tell you. Mitt Romney in particular, I have a beef with that. Mitt Romney in particular should have at least the decency to appreciate the fact there is such a program to help those who have financial problem. And the reason I say that is because if you remember, I mentioned earlier, his father, George Romney, was on welfare for a year. So his parents weren't always wealthy. They had financial problems. So it's a good thing that the program was available for his father to take advantage of. So Mitt Romney, of all people, should have had the decency, the recognition that a program that helped him now being the successful person that he is, because had his father not get the opportunity to take advantage of the food stamp of the welfare program, don't know where he would have been today. So of all people, Mitt Romney should have been the last person to criticize the fact that some people today, at least this program is available for them. Now let's go back to SNAP. SNAP is the new name. It's no longer food stamp, it's SNAP. So here it is. 40%. Now this information I'm going to give you is for 1 year later. It was in 2014, according to the Department of Agriculture. That was a report put out there by the Department of Agriculture. That's the department that collect that information, that's responsible for that information. According to the Department of Agriculture, 40% of SNAP recipients in 2015 were white. 25.7% were black. 10.3% were Hispanic. Now, once again, you add the black to the Hispanic and you get pretty much less than the whites. So when you hear that Donald Trump say, who are they? Maybe he's not, I'm not saying all that to minimize, to actually blame or make the whites who have to actually take advantage of the welfare program. I'm not here to try to blame them or here to try to make them feel bad. I'm here to make a point. And the point is to show the myth that has been in the country, in the Republican circle in particular, and that's the reason that they always so hostile to welfare, is because they are under the impression that blacks make up the majority of people on welfare. 40% of people who receive food stamp in 2015 were white. Only 25.7% were black. Only 25.7%, 10.3% were Hispanic. When you add both the black and the Hispanic together, it's still 39%. It's still under the 40% of the whites. So when you hear that blacks make up the majority of people on welfare, they saw such lazy people sitting on their butt, doing nothing and living the life, that's not what the numbers say. That's not what the data says. Those data are not data that someone pulled out of a hat. Those are collected data. As those people are using the program, they collect those information. Now, here's a tidbit. This is just an anecdote. I never could get anybody to confirm or refute that information. in the beginning of the welfare program, white were felt so diminished by the idea of seeking for public assistance. When they did, they would identify themselves as blacks. According to the anecdote, whoever was taking the information from them were obviously whites as well, never challenged them. Now, the anecdote wants you to think that that's why at some point it looks like the stat would show overwhelmingly a majority of blacks on welfare. So in numbers, it would be blacks, but in reality, it would not be. Again, as I say, it is just an anecdote, but as far as data are concerned, since we have been collecting data, we have information that clearly show that the majority of people on welfare receiving public assistance, welfare, food stamps, and so on are white. I'm not certain I understand where the information or where the perception that blacks make up the majority of people on welfare. I'm not certain I understand where that information comes from. But the bottom line remains, the reality is a majority of people on welfare are actually white. That's proven by the data that has been collected. Now, why the information people continue to believe that blacks make up the majority? Why do they continue to do that? I don't know. But I have a suspicion that the reason for that is because of that welfare queen that was painted in 1976 by Ronald Reagan. And since then, that welfare queen has been hovering over the nation, and it so happened that welfare queen is black. So it stigmatized the blacks, but what it does, it's even worse because it makes it impossible to run a proper welfare program, public assistance program, because that's a reason, again, as I mentioned, a number of veterans who currently homeless, living on the street, they prefer to be on the street than to be humiliated at one of those offices. It is something that was reported on Huffington Post, but more recently. There are 2016, 70 million beneficiaries, Medicaid beneficiaries, 70 million. Listen to the following numbers. 70 million beneficiaries in Medicaid. And Medicaid, in case you don't know, this is the program, the healthcare program that are available for people who either do not have insurance or cannot afford insurance, people who may be unemployed. Now, those two that I mentioned prior may be employed but cannot have insurance because either they're part-time, their job is not giving it to them, or they're underemployed. they unemployed, they on some sort of public assistance, those are the people who make use of Medicaid. Now, 70 million in 2016. 43% of that white. 43% are white. 43% is almost 30 million of that. 43% of the 70 million beneficiary in 2016 on Medicaid, white. 18%, less than half, black. 18%. Where do American, especially Republican, get the idea that blacks make up overwhelmingly the recipient of welfare? The welfare queen hovering over the nation. Now, there are, according to the same data, 43 million of people on food stamp in 2016. 43%, or 43 million, 43 million of the people on food stamp in 2016. 36.2% of that white. 36.2%. There were 25.6% black. Numbers after numbers after numbers, no matter where you look at in the public assistance program, whites are usually twice as many as blacks. Now, how in the world does it become that blacks are so lazy, they sitting somewhere doing nothing and they collecting public assistance? Now, you going to work, working your butt off to take care of those dumb black who don't want to do anything, those lazy blacks. This type of misinformation, usually peddled by Fox. If you're on Fox, you pretty much, that's all you know. You know, you learn what is untrue. You become dumber listening to people on Fox than before you did. Because not only they don't have information, and what makes it even worse is the fact they rationalize the information that they're presenting in front of you to show you that's true. No matter where you look, the numbers clearly say that most whites, sometimes twice as many as blacks, have received or are receiving public assistance. Now, just like our veterans, something you may not know about blacks, if you're not black, is the fact that blacks have a lot of pride. They don't like being humiliated either. They would rather starve than going someplace and be humiliated. I'm not certain I understand where that misinformation come from, except to say that maybe after Ronald Reagan created the welfare queen, that picture has been hovering over the nation and say, well, it's blacks that's really keeping the welfare system going. And that should explain why Republicans in general want to completely get rid of it instead of improving the management of the program so that people who actually have a need for it can get the help so that they can get back on their feet. That's what George Romney did. George Romney, Mitt Romney's father, was on welfare, and he got back on his feet, and he did so well that Mitt Romney grew up in a home where things were great. Now, our veterans, as I mentioned, quite a few of them, shunned the idea of going to a public to a welfare office to seek for help, for assistance, because they don't want to be humiliated. Because when you go to a welfare office, the people who work there, they have such a bad behavior, and that's not necessarily coming directly from them. It comes from the top, because they don't see people there as individuals they need to help so that they can get out of the financial predicament that they're in. But they see people they just want to kick on the curb. And that's why our veterans are on the street scavenging for food instead of going to a welfare office to seek for assistance. It is shameful that's the case. Now, we're talking about all that because a few weeks ago, Mitch McConnell, after taking $1.5 trillion to give as welfare check to the rich, now he wants to take care of the national debt. Oh my God, there is a national debt we have to take care of. But he didn't have any problem taking $1.5 trillion, give 1.3 out of that to the wealthy and the large corporation. But in order for him to take care of the national debt, he wants to cut the benefit from those who are struggling in life. That's the reason we're talking about the welfare. Because Republicans always have things backwards. The people that they need to help are the very people they're crushing, they're throwing on the side, and at the same time they have no problem taking money and giving it to those who already have plenty. I'm out of time, and we'll be right back. Join me tomorrow at 2 p.m. when we discuss the expenses, the money, what the recipient of the welfare program received, and see if they're really living it up, as Ronald Reagan said on the welfare queen picture of the welfare queen that he painted, to see why when you listen on Fox to those people telling you about people just living the life as welfare recipient, and that's the reason that you should be so angry about it, because you're working hard and for someone, some lazy bum, to just be taking advantage of that. So you'll find out exactly what those people receive and why those individuals, whether it's Republican leaders or Republican pundits, that they are simply lying about the whole thing in order to rile you up and make you feel that other people are taking advantage of you. Code word for blacks are taking advantage of you. But as you see today, the numbers don't lie. Those are numbers collected by third-party organizations that clearly show you that whites in general have been taking the most advantage of the welfare system. So it's not speculation, it is proven, it is factual. But what we're going to talk about is to show you there is nobody on welfare that's living the life. I hope to see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Have a good afternoon. Fourth Branch Podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.